Awesome. Welcome everybody to today's session, depending on where you're viewing this particular webinar from. Give everyone a few seconds to join today. Get into the Goldcast motion and get ready for the next 30 minutes or so of how to see the risks others miss in your software estate. So today we're going to take a bit more of a deeper dive into an overview, really just a teaser of some of the capabilities within the Flexera stack that you may not be aware of, and particularly focus on the risk. Today we're joined by Jerome, who's going to take us through the security component of the solution. So welcome, Jerome. Thanks for joining us. So just to get stuck in. So for those that haven't, and this may be your first webinar with us, so we have gone through a whole series of these as well. So this is the last 9 in the series. These are available online in some capacity as well. So some links will be shared in a second if you want to do catch up and watch any of these on demand. Continuing on with the webinar series. So really today we're focused on how to see the risk others miss. So depending on where you're joining us from, you'll get access to this content on the 19th or the 20th. Looking ahead for the next 2 months, in June, we'll cover proving ITAM value. So a bit of a look into how do you elevate the conversations around ITAM to the C-level. And in July, we're going to take a focus on metrics that matter. So really looking into FinOps and the type of metrics that you can surface to really drive home the value and ROI around the FinOps technology there. So today, like I always start with these sessions, I just put the platform front and center. And today's a little bit different in terms of where we're going to focus is kind of adjacent to the platform. So there's some fantastic capability around security vulnerability research and from the securing your team, and also around how do we do that vulnerability remediation through Security Vulnerability Manager. So I'm not going to go through and bore you to death with any of my talk today. So I'll hand over to Jerome, who's going to take you through the details in this space. So over to you.
Yeah, thanks, Nathan. So hi, everyone. Let's talk about security. So first, security has no less than 70 categories, and each category needs specialists, budgets, solutions, and they're all as equal as important to everyone involved. So what we do with Flexera's risk management solutions, we focus on the 3 magenta ones. Obviously, with the recent Spot Security acquisition, we are able to also add cloud security. And with our ITV or IT visibility solution, we can deliver a higher confidence in more comprehensive risk and compliance management, of course, depending on the requirements and expectations of the customer. So let's dive right into the vulnerability and patch management and what that means. So first, what is a vulnerability? A vulnerability is a flaw, it's a bug, it's a weakness in the system design, and it can be exploited at some point. Software vulnerabilities are also referred as a CVE, a unique identifier to each vulnerability, and one CVE could potentially affect just one or, in most of the time, multiple products. Even up to 200 products can be affected by one CVE or one vulnerability. They're all registered through a platform called the CV.org. It's a semi-government agency out of the US. And it's also covered in the NVD, the National Vulnerability Database, and all since 1999, so over 27 years now. And what we see is a huge increase in the number of vulnerabilities. It's increasing rapidly, and that's not only because we are getting better in what we do, but also what happens with the AI, with Mythos. We see that a lot of vulnerabilities are being disclosed right now. Where in 2025 we had about 180 vulnerabilities per business day. Currently, year to date, we are over 250 CVs per business day. Let that sink in. How do you track? How do you know? And how do you keep up with that? And we also see that with our own dedicated market-leading research team, Sequoia Research, we see a huge increase in like we never seen before. As you can see here, the past few years is pretty mild, I would say, but if we look at this year, the numbers are doubling, and that is mainly due to the LLMs or to AI or automation. But it is a concerning situation that we're in, because how do you cope with that? And as I mentioned before, CV information is maintained by this database cv.org and the NVD, the National Vulnerability Database. And normally the NVD pushes or publishes actually CVs with additional information. They do like analysis and making sure that that all the information is correct in there. But unfortunately, during the last 2 years, since February 2024, we see that NVD is no longer up to the task to maintain a verified analyzed catalog of CVs, and making it therefore dysfunctional and unreliable. But many organizations still use that free data downstream. We see that in the Tenables, the Rapid7s, the Qualises, and all those major traditional vulnerability scanners out there. And actually, 3 weeks ago, the NVD announced that they are moving to a more selective risk-based model. That means that they only will focus on a subset of all the products that they normally would care about. And that is going to be a huge issue. They're only going to focus for internal customers. They're a US government. And that will result in a less than 50% coverage in the validated and analyzed and enriched information that the organizations are looking for. There's great news for malicious actors, because they can, the vulnerabilities will still be disclosed, but, there will be less information for people to actually remediate them. So the malicious actors can build exploits faster and be more successful. So, what is an exploit then? So an exploit is our worst nightmare. When a vulnerability is disclosed by a vendor or before they even know, right, a 0-day, malicious actors have already started building so-called exploits or proof of concepts that could lead to ultimately a ransomware attack, a malware, data theft, or even other costly, impactful events that can cripple companies, industries, people at home, hospitals. People even died in the past because of breaches, and even governments could be affected by it. And exploitation of known software vulnerabilities remains the greatest cause of security incidents. And that's not me saying it, but it's the National Cybersecurity Center saying it. It's the Australian government saying it. And there are so many other authorities and compliance regulators out there for the industry, like Cyber Essentials Plus, DORA, NIS2, all these in the list. And in some of these compliance rules and regulations, even that the board level people are being personally responsible for fines, for even losing their job. So it's very important that we keep track of everything and we try to do our best. And the best thing we can do, of course, is to patch, right? A patch is the data for modifying an existing software resource, as you can read. But it's also very important because there are some problems with patching. It doesn't come out as fast as we would, and if it comes out, the problem is that you need to find the patch first. You need to know if it's applicable to your environment, and then deploy it. That can take sometimes days, weeks, sometimes even months in some cases. And that means that the malicious actors will have access to your environment if you know it or don't know it. But that could lead up to like huge, massive exploits or other negative consequences. Like, for example, the Jaguar Land Rover hack, the most costliest attack in UK history, with an economic loss of approximately 2 billion. And Asahi, the brewer, they were with 5 months of limited production and logistics. They had lost 50% of their production in the final quarter of the year last year, and losing tens of millions. I think about 30 million in lost revenue in Q3 alone. So there's a lot of things going on, and we see it sometimes in the news, but sometimes we don't even know that you have been hacked. So let's talk about the risk window. So this is what we call the window of opportunity, or the risk window, and it has two elements. It has the disclosure to awareness time, and it has the awareness to remediation time. The disclosure is something that happens, with the vulnerability tools, the researchers, the vendors that will have to disclose a vulnerability. And the time to awareness is the time that you figure out, okay, is there a vulnerability that could affect my environment? And if so, then we need to do something, and that's called the awareness, time to awareness. And then, okay, what are we going to do about it? So we need to find a patch, we need to test the patch, deploy the patch. That's called the awareness to remediation. In some cases, it can take a long time. But the time to the first exploit, has been decreased from 30 days to 1 day, even less than a day, because of all the things that are going on in the world. We got conflicts, we got AI rising, and that doesn't work in our favor. So we need to be faster. We need to shrink that risk window, because it still takes about on average 192 days to remediation. The good news is, though, that 99% of all the exploits out there, they exploit known vulnerabilities. So if you're aware of a vulnerability and you can patch it or remediate it in time, you should be safe. So shrinking that risk window, ideally, we would like to have the vulnerability information as soon as they're disclosed and remediate them as fast as possible before even this exploit is created. So another good news is that less than 10% of all vulnerabilities are ever exploited. That means that making the right decision based on the right intelligence at the right time, by informing the right people that they can take the right action before the wrong people do. That is a little bit the story that we're trying to help you with. That's where also Flexera can support you. And 10% patching can be enough, but you need to prioritize. If you cannot patch everything and more are popping up, it's crucial that you work on the right ones. So 10% can be enough, but yeah, you need to have the right information and the right solution to work with you. And that is something that we can offer. With Secunia Research, the solution, the research team that is behind some of our solutions at Flexera. Secunia Research was acquired in 2015 by Flexera, but they were already a market leader for many years. Since 2002, since its inception, the goal of Secunia Research team is to provide the most accurate and most reliable source of vulnerability and threat intelligence. We focus not on everything, but we focus on those products that our customers care about the most. And that is currently a number between 74,000 and 75,000 product versions that we check and verify, enrich the data for all those product versions. And we give out alerts within the same day in most cases, 95%, 97%. And the ones, that other 2% is where, there's some extra testing needed or extra complexity is found. So that is what we do. And we use that in several solutions. We have Secunia Research, the team of experts that, are relentlessly in testing, verifying, and documenting software vulnerabilities. But also, and that will go into two of our solutions called Software Vulnerability Research, SVR. Our solution that is more of a SaaS solution that provides you all our research data in one dashboard. You can use that for monitoring vulnerabilities in a way that you can use like watch lists, so that you get like information about the products that you care about. Including automated notifications. We even have like workflow, so that if the vulnerability comes in or an advisory comes in, that you automatically get a notification. You can even trigger service desk tickets, even third-party service desk tickets using our comprehensive API capabilities. It doesn't include scanning or detection or patching capabilities. So it's just data. So perfect for SOC teams, for security researchers, that are out there and need to improve and reduce the time spent on research, especially with those over 250 vulnerabilities per business day. The second tool that I want to talk about is SVM, Software Vulnerability Manager. And Software Vulnerability Manager uses that same Secunia research data, but it uses in a little bit in a one-stop shop matter. It's scanning, assessing all the devices from the Mac, Windows, and Red Hat Linux family. All the third-party products are scanned and identified, and we report on them if they are secure, insecure, or end of life. Then we will, of course, report on that. We will prioritize, help you to prioritize. You can even do your own custom prioritization based on what is important to you, context sensitive, if it's, is it sensitive in your environment or not. And then we have the largest patch catalog of the world to remediate. And it's fully integrated with all the major endpoint management tools out there, like Config Manager, Intune, GemF, WSUS, Tanium, etc., but also in a parallel way. So what happens is if you want to deploy but you are in a migration or transition from a Config Manager to an Intune environment, we can cover you. We do that in the same way with one dashboard, and you can just deploy those patches to the right solution. So what makes Secunia Research so unique? Well, we do research based on context-based, so product-focused. That means that all our advisories roll up to our vulnerabilities that are relevant to a specific product version. And that's excellent for prioritization, because you have one advisory, one update, that often will solve many CVEs. In this screen, you can see an example of it. I will hopefully have some time to give you some more insights on that. But yeah, it's a full data of curated, tested, and verified information. And that is super important for our customers because they like to have clear and accurate, reliable data. So let me show you really quick, and I'm going to go and stop sharing here and share my screen. Let me see, to give you a really quick view of our software vulnerability research. So this is our database, our dashboard. You can have all kinds of dashboards, and you can add as many as you want. We got our vulnerability manager, which is those watch lists, so you can create like subsets of products where you want to make sure that all the information comes to you. This is our live feed of all the vulnerabilities that are being delivered to your dashboard. And for example, let's take this one here, because it has a 7.5 and a 16. So a 7.5 is a CVSS score, which is a criticality score, and threat score is 16. It's a score that goes from 0 to 99. So the higher it is, the more exploit information we have for you. So for example, if we take this one here, you can see here the Secunia advisory with the creation date, our own Secunia criticality score, which is since 2002 a standard for a very reliable way of seeing, is this really critical or not? Here you can see if it's a 0-day or not, what the impact or the consequences if a hacker gains access or exploits this vulnerability. You can see what the attack factor is, what the solution status is, or if there's a vendor patch, and most of the times, like I think 95% of the time, the patch is already delivered in the same 24 hours. And this is something also important. It's a Secunia CVSS score. So normally the vendor will give you a CVSS score based on their research, and that is not always correct. I'll get back to that in a few seconds. But CVE references, so if there's multiple CVEs, you can see them all here. If there's a red dot, that means that there is exploit information. So for example, as you can see here in the exploit information, you can see that it was recently linked to penetration testing tools and historically linked to penetration testing tools. So it's not super scary, but it is already a sign that there's activity going on towards that vulnerability. This is the operating system, and all the information is in there, including CPE information, which is the identifier for the product. And it contains always all the information why we research it, what the outcomes are from our research team. There's also a solution always provided and some additional information from where we got the information. So I wanted to go back a little bit quick to the CVSS score. So what we do is we verify the CVSS score because that's very important, because that triggers people. Some of the regulators, the compliance regulators out there, they say if it's a vulnerability with a CVSS score of 7 and higher, you need to fix it within 2 weeks, or you need to fix it in a week. So it's very important that you have the right information at the right time, and that means verified information. So I did a quick check on this CVSS. So we say it's a 7.5. But if we go to the actual CVE, we see that the CVE.org, in this case, the vendor, has given the score of a 3.3, which is not the same as the 7.5 that we just discovered and researched and confirmed. The interesting thing also is that, and then coming back to the NVD is dysfunctional, as I said, and this is one of the reasons, because they don't prioritize this one. They will not do any efforts to confirm or analyze or enrich this vulnerability because of resource or other concerns, as we all know. But they say it's also a 3.3 as a base score. And then, for example, I'm taking one of those downstream traditional scanners like Tenable. They say this one is a 5.5. So it's a different score. It's a little bit higher than the original one from the vendor, but it's still not a 7.5. So that gives you a little bit of a thought, like, research data research is very important, and you want to have the most reliable source of data. So that was a little bit that I wanted to show you. Of course, there's other cool things in here, like analytics, where you can see, the rise of all the vulnerability in the advisories. And actually, year to date, we see that we are quite at the same pace right now. You see all kinds of other cool information. Even you can say, well, if it's from remote, you can say, well, if it's extreme, sorry, the wrong one. Then you can see here all the extreme ones, and you can see that some of them are having a high CVSS score and a high threat score. So those were the highest priorities for you. But there's a partial fix, so that means, just read it well carefully. Anyway, that was a little bit the quick overview. If you want more information, if you want to see this product live or you want to test it out, just send me an email or our team, and we can definitely help you there and making sure that you are there with a test license. So I'm going quickly back to our slides. So hopefully everyone can see that, but let's start about the SVM. I'm not going to demo SVM right now because I don't think we have the time and there's so much to see. So I just wanted to show you some of the unique features that we have, like, for example, our assessment. So lightweight scanner, it's like 700 KB to scan and run as a scheduled task. We can also scan remote as a service, zero touch, or using your own deployment mechanism, or running it over the network. It's very lightweight. It will take less than a minute or 2 minutes, depending on how deep you want to research. But we scan only for executables, DLLs, and OCX files, and the log4j jar files. And all results are then reported back in a web console for further prioritization, but in the base, it will tell you secure, insecure, end of life. And not only the host name, but also the path to the insecure file is recorded so that you can use that to optimize the remediation and patch process. And from the next step is then is to considering the complete picture, right? You want to see all those the variables that you can use for prioritization, because there are several variables and angles that you can get for the full picture. And that will help you to identify what needs to be patched immediately, or some of the vulnerabilities that you can take in the regular, update stance that you probably have in your organization. Then let's talk about the SVM remediation. So since SVM is a one-stop shop from assessment to reporting to prioritization to notification and remediation, we also have that deployment piece in there, the remediation. Selected patches, we have like the largest patch catalog with over, I think 14,000 patches currently in our patch catalog that we can integrate into many of the well-known endpoint management systems like the System Center, the Config Manager, Intune, GemApp, Workspace ONE, etc. So you don't need another patch agent. We are not a patch agent, but we leverage the existing solutions for that with simultaneous integration into your organization to manage multiple endpoint and patch deployment solutions. So, for example, if you are in a transition from Config Manager to Intune, that's where we can help you. But the most important feature, of course, is that patch catalog, the largest available with a growing catalog, currently with over 14,000 patches available for download and deployment. That is huge. And the interesting thing is, if you have a patch that is not part of our patch catalog, you can request it, and within 24 to 72 hours, we can add that to the patch catalog. Not only the patch, but also the file signature information to scan if we were not able to scan it, and all the research information from then on. And the patch publisher is a connector between multiple deployment solutions, as you can see in this screen, right? We have multiple deployment solutions like WSS, Intune, Workspace ONE, even HL, BigFix. And, you can manage them all from one dashboard. Pretty cool. So patch automation is also very important because, sometimes you don't want to wait too long. And therefore you can configure subscriptions to new patches, even if they trigger certain rules like the criteria, the threat score, the CVSS score, besides prevalence and asset sensitivity, which is also part of the prioritization process. So ultimately that can then be used to scan and, to deploy the patches at the right time for the right vulnerability and criticality. All right, so I think to summarize, Flexera Software Vulnerability Manager and Software Vulnerability Research that I just showed in the demo, these solutions help organizations around the world in any vertical, in any industry, to identify, manage, and mitigate risk proactively within an hour after receiving the license. Yes, that's true. If you get the license, you can be fully operational within an hour, actually within 10 minutes, but we'll give you some training and we'll make sure that, all the configuration and the first run of the scanning has been done together so that you're fully up and running. So that's pretty awesome. And we do deliver value. We deliver 70% in reduction time spent in researching and validating security data by just using our Secunia research. And that number will even go up higher because the number of vulnerabilities is rising rapidly. We will definitely save you a lot of FTE time, saved by prioritizing vulnerable software in your environment. Because if you try to patch everything, that is a very costly operation. But if we can tell you exactly what needs to be patched first, prioritizing, that will help you to save a lot of resources. And those resources can be reused in other more important or other important activities. I think we can save millions, by remediating patches quicker, so that exploits cannot have an effect on your environment. But most importantly, we can save you the deployment of a patch from weeks and months back to hours and days. Because IT professionals are notified immediately, we can automate the process, and that will all help you to become more secure and shrink that risk window. And that's what our goal is. Okay, Nathan, I think I'm mostly close to the end.
Yeah, perfect. So I think I've answered some of the questions. I've been answering them in the chat as we've been talking as well. So thanks again, Jeroen, for joining us today. As we said, please reach out to Jeroen or I if you want to get some more information. We've just added these 2 QR codes to point to the product pages on the Flexera website to get some more details. But please do reach out to us if you want to deep dive into the solution. It's just impossible to get through absolutely everything in the time that we have today. But hopefully this was a fantastic sneak peek of both of these fantastic capabilities. And please reach out if you want to know any more. So thanks again, and thanks everyone for joining today.
Thank you.